Hello, 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 hello. This is Essence Evolve, and I am coming to you live. But first thing I want to do, I want to give gratitude to the Creator and to the Creator, to the divine that is within myself, that I have stepped out of the boat. And what I mean by that is this, that I have stepped out into a territory that I already saw myself in, but now I'm walking that path. This is my first podcast, and I am so happy to be able to now step into another dimension of myself where I share not only my story, but also to help uplift humanity. And so the name of my podcast is Finding You Inside of You. And it's significant that I chose that name, Finding You Inside of You, because that is a big part of my journey. And that is a big part of why I have made this particular journey to help others to find themselves inside of them. Because so often people are asking the question, who am I? Why am I here? Well, one of the places that we need to start, like myself, is the journey within. It's when you find yourself inside of you, you have found the step one to all the other steps that you will be taking inside and outside of your life. Because when you find you inside of you, that means this, that you have gone down into the subconscious mind of yourself for yourself, and you have learned behaviors that you and I were not supposed to learn, but because we learned to think and to feel and to do outside of ourselves, rather than looking from within, we have this, what I call all these multiple personalities. And so it is a multiple personality or multiple personalities. Multiple personalities or behaviors are what we learned that was never us who we were in the beginning. And that is why many of us feel so disconnected, and I'll talk about this in just a second. We feel so disconnected from ourselves. And the reason being is that we are not living our true, authentic self. We are living the behaviors that we have learned, and it's in our subconscious mind, and we don't realize that it's in our subconscious mind until we take that pause, until we take that stopping moment, that we get off the wheel of life, that we get off the wheel of someone else is saying something, but it just didn't feel right with us. And so as we take the journey within, finding you inside of you, you and I are finding that a lot of the things we were taught, a lot of the things that we believed, a lot of the things that we learned was the thoughts and the behaviors, not only of other people, but from a collective society as well. So I'll give you a little bit of background about my journey, how I even started with this. I began to wonder why it was that I was always looking for love. Now, some people may say, okay, you were looking for love, but guess what? Unknowing to us, we were all looking for love. And there's this song that says, looking for love in all the wrong places. And I will add to that, looking for love in too many faces, or looking for love from too many faces. And that's where we get off track, because it's innately in us as human beings and in animals too, to be connected. So looking for love is something that I was looking for, and I didn't realize that I was looking for love, but I was looking for it outside of myself. And when you're looking for something outside of yourself, we begin to develop behaviors that are not like ourselves. And the reason why is because now we've learned to not only become a people pleaser, but we are looking for people to please a behavior that only we can satisfy. So I started out with looking for love in all the wrong places, okay? And it wasn't anything wrong with me for looking for love, but what was my motive for the reason why I was looking for love outside of myself? Now stay with me, because this is the journey of going within. And then when you begin to look for love in all the wrong places that is outside of yourself, attached to that is that you're looking for acceptance. So let that pause for just a second. Looking for love and looking for acceptance. Why was I looking for love and why was I looking for acceptance? Okay? You can look for love in a person, you can look for love in a place, and you can look for love in a thing. And you can get all of that, okay? But then at the end of the day, it's something about that still was never satisfying. And you can go many, 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 many years and never get that satisfaction, because self-love, as my podcast, this series will show, that it's going to only come from the inside. Hello, somebody. It's time to tell yourself and myself the truth. Self-love, when I don't love myself, when I don't value myself, and that's the buzzword on the street about loving yourself. When you love yourself, your values begin to really change, because you begin to look at yourself and begin to ask yourself, why am I doing what I'm doing? So I began to take this journey within myself to find out, why is it that I was so attached to the need to be loved? Why was I so attached to the need to be accepted? Why was I having all of these needs? And so my journey, finding you inside of you, I had to take a pause in my life. That doesn't mean that I stopped working. That doesn't mean that I stopped anything that I was doing. But it does come a time that you have to sit with yourself. And what do I mean by sitting with yourself? That means that you have to have a sabbatical moment with yourself. And it could be sitting in your automobile. It could be sitting in your hot tub. It could be sitting anywhere that you are sitting, where you are in a place of solitude, where you are asking yourself the questions. And I tell you this, a lot of times we look for people to give us the answers that we are looking for, when I will promise you that the answers that you're looking for, that I'm looking for, when you take the deep dive within, it is already within you. How do you know it's already in you? Because your intuition, which is what we were all given, called intuition or an inner knowing. These are things or hearings that we hear the voice within that we already know. Did you know that every creature, every human being, every living thing that is made was given by the divine a protection? And what do I mean by protection? As a human, we were given the intuition. The animal kingdom was given instincts. It's your warning sign on the inside of you that is talking to you, your intuition, your inner voice. So when you begin to sit with yourself, you will begin to hear your inner voice, that still small voice that you were hearing all the time. But when you do not sit with yourself, and when you do not have the courage to look at yourself in the mirror, you and I will always be seeking something that is outside of us that will never give you the true satisfaction that comes from within. So my story continues. So when I began to look at myself, I had to ask myself, now, where did this start from? Where did this come from? And that's when I began to analyze and look at my childhood. I'll let that sink for a second. Because some people may be wondering, how does my childhood relate to as I have grown into an adult, okay? What does my childhood have to do with that? Think about it this way. A lot of times, as adults, or as we grow in chronological age, as far as age, we have the tendency, without consciously being aware of it, to say, I remember when I was 10 years old. I remember when I was 15 years old, or 30 years old, or 2 years old. You see, everything about us goes into a memory, and it's been scientifically proven. Everything that has happened to us has a memory to it. We may not remember it, but everything has a memory to it, because some things about us way back then, we do remember it. So I began to sit with myself and then ask myself, where is this obsession coming from? Where is this need to be needed coming from? Where is this need to be loved coming from? So I had to sit with myself, and as I'm sitting with myself is talking to myself, because even the Bible, if you look at it that way, it says the kingdom is within you. It is not outside of you. The kingdom, the spirit, the divine is within you, and then the two have become one. So the divine without and divine within and divine of all things, it is within me. And when I accept that, the two becomes one. So I'm talking to myself. I'm hearing my God self speak to me, and it's reminded me, and it has taken me inside of me, because I ask and you shall receive. So as I'm going inside of myself, finding me inside of me, I went back into my childhood when I was in the 5th grade. That's about 10 years old. And I remember being in school. And I remember wanting to be a part of things and to be a part of things. And that was my first lesson that I can remember of being ostracized, being abandoned. Because if you look a certain way, if you born to a certain family, or if you have, quote unquote, these things that society looks at as not acceptable, as children, we begin to internalize that as rejection. And rejection, you can mark it down and take it to the bank. It has to do with the feeling of not being needed and not being loved. So as I began to look at that and I began to think of that, then other things inside of me, it's like these doors began to open. I grew up in a particular community that I was always wanting, and this is when I was a child, elementary age, 10, 11, 5, 6 years old. I remember wanting to be with the group or the crowd, because I wanted to be accepted. I was the type of person that always liked to read books and those kinds of things. And sometimes when you're not on the same wavelength with people, and at that time children don't understand those kinds of things, then you ostracize again, because you like to read books, you like to do this. And children, being a former school teacher, I know this firsthand. When you're not accepted among your peers, okay, that's taking you further down the rabbit's hole. You feel rejected. You feel not normal. You feel that you don't look the part. So you start people pleasing. You start doing things to cope, because you want to fit in. You want to be loved. You want to be accepted. So what am I saying? That as I begin to find me inside of me, I began to see why some of these behaviors that I have carried to my adulthood are sabotaging my path, if you will. You know, you take 50 steps forward, and then your emotions kick in because something happened. That rejection kicks in, okay? Your low self-esteem, your low self-worth. Okay, so where did it come from? It came from somewhere back in our childhood, and it's called childhood traumas. And we carry these traumas with us throughout our adulthood, unconscious to us. And I'm going to read some of these. This is some of the things that I found within myself. When I found me inside of me, I found that I was very insecure in my adulthood. And I'll talk more about this as this moves on. But I found out that as an adult, I was very insecure. And someone looking at this podcast or hearing it that knows me would say, I can't believe that you were insecure. Here you are, you're doing this, you're not afraid to speak in front of people. You see these outward appearances, right? But somewhere deep inside, behind closed doors, I was a very insecure person. How do I know that? Because I was self-sabotage myself when no one was looking with this self-talk. I don't think I'm good enough to do this. I don't think I'm supposed to do this. Where did that come from? It still came from somewhere in my childhood or how I grew up or people I was around that somewhere psychologically was programming my mind because maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I wasn't tall enough. Maybe I wasn't the right color. Maybe I didn't have the right hair texture. You know, it's all those maybes. And these things cause us to be insecure. And you know what we do? I'm going to hold this up for you here. And I'll talk more about this. See, we live below the iceberg. That's the hidden self. That's the traumatized self that we don't talk about because we don't know that it's trauma, okay? We don't know that it's linked to trauma. These are the little hidden foxes. This is the hidden self. And what we do, unconscious to us, we live at the top of the iceberg, called the tip of the iceberg. What I have identified and gave it a label that says, that's how we cope with our insecurities. That's how we cope with our anxieties. That's how we cope with generational traumas. And generational traumas are things that we saw people in our family do, behaviors in our families, those things that we saw our mothers, or fathers, or uncles, or people in our what we call blood family do. And this is generational traumas that I'll talk more about at another time that we carry. And guess what? We act that out because we learned that. It's in our subconscious mind. And a lot of that was carried over from our childhood, called learned behavior. And what it has done to us as adults, it has caused us to be looking for love, looking for validation, looking to be accepted. But when you find you inside of you, when you take the chance and see the good, the bad, and the ugly that's inside of us that we're hiding under the iceberg, and that has caused many types of illnesses, many types of sicknesses. And I'll give you one as a perfect example. I never had panic attacks in my entire life, ever, never. When I was teaching school, and I've been retired 4 years now, so this was probably about maybe 5 years ago. I was having these horrible chest pains. It makes you feel like that you're having a heart attack. And it just happens out of nowhere. And I remember one time in my classroom, because you can feel a panic attack coming on, right? And when I had that panic attack, I didn't know what in the world was happening. And I got hot. I felt like I was going to pass out. I couldn't move. I couldn't talk. I feel like I was dying, to be honest with you, because I hadn't had that feeling before. So where am I going with this? When we have hidden traumas that are inside of us, when we don't go inside to find us or me inside of me, it turns into other behaviors that your body will begin to alert you. You got something going that you're not dealing with, because now it's manifesting itself in various ways. Could be overeating. It could be over exercising. It could be anything that we're doing that's overboard, because we're trying to calm an anxiety that we're having, and we're not dealing with something that's going on the inside. And what we do when we leave our place and we're in public, we learn how to cope with it. That's the top of the iceberg. We learn coping strategies. And so when I began to ask myself, what is going on inside of me? Let me find out what is going on inside of me. Why am I having these panic attacks? Because I went to the doctor, and matter of fact, I had one in my home one time, right in front of one of my friends, and we had to call the ambulance. And so they kept me in the hospital overnight for observation. And the question was asked to me, since it was not a heart attack, the question was asked to me, what is going on in your mind? Didn't realize that I was walking in depression. Didn't realize that. Didn't realize that my emotions were out of alignment. But when I found myself inside of myself, I had to identify that I felt abandoned. And even in my adulthood, I was still walking in abandonment, loneliness, people pleasing, insecurities. And it all linked back to still trying to find love and acceptance through people, places, and things. And I end with saying this. When you do not find you inside of you, you put your body in overload. You put your body in overload. You overstress your body. You're not thinking. You're not present. You're not conscious. You're not aware. You're not taking moments out to sit with yourself, to calm yourself down and have a conversation with yourself, with your higher self, or with your divine self, or with your divinity, and not listening to and watching your space. And when I say watching your space, watching who goes in your space and who comes out of your space. Because we take on the energies that are outside of us. And I'll talk more about that later. We take on that which is outside of us, and we internalize that, okay? But the self-love, walking in self-love, when you begin to find you inside of you, and one of the keys to your own inner kingdom is unlocking that door of self-love. And when you unlock that door of self-love, you will find all over the wall, all over the floor, inside of that door, inside of that room, inside of you is so much of a lack of self-love. Because when you love yourself, when you value yourself, you begin to understand it is important what I think about myself. It is important what I feel about myself. It is where I begin to tell my own self the truth. And sometimes that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I have to tell myself the truth. The first lover of myself is myself. And when I begin to rearrange that room, when I went into that door, when I took that key myself and unturned it and unlocked it, which is inside of me, I found that I was filled with a lack of self-love for myself. And I realized through intuition, through the divine spirit, which is in me talking to myself, helping me to understand where that came from. And that's where the healing and the forgiveness comes from. When I begin to look and see where where the lack of self-love came from as door number one. And I began to heal that part because I saw where it came from. I forgave all people who had no idea that they were hurting me. And you know, people don't set out to say, I'm going to hurt you or this or that and the other. Now, in some cases, that does happen, okay? But the way you were raised, if you didn't get all the love as a child, and in some cases I didn't growing up, I can't hold that against my parents because who really taught us what love is about? A lot of these things we're just now learning. Parents don't come with a manual how to be a parent. Nobody comes really with a outside manual to know how to treat themselves. It is through your journey of how you treat yourself. And guess what? The master teacher said it. When you learn how to treat yourself, you truly do learn to treat others the way you want to be treated. So as you healing yourself, finding you inside of you, self-love is the first door of finding you inside of you. And if you take the courage, and if you have the courage to go within yourself and to thine own self be true, you will find other doors within you, other hidden traumas that are within you, other behaviors that are within you that you never even knew that they were there. It's just that you feel that as you have grown and become an adult, and even if you're not an adult, this applies to children as well because it's human behavior. There's no age to it. But when you begin to find you inside of you, self-love, and from that comes healing. You deal with your rejection. You deal with your anger. And I can't wait to do the other broadcast, podcast. You deal with your addictions. You see, and I'm going to tap on that for just a second. People look at addictions like addicted to sex, addicted to drugs. You know, it's much bigger than that because our society does not talk about the addiction to low self-esteem. Our society does not talk about the addiction to your own self-doubt. I'm addicted to doubting myself. I can't do this. I can't do that. Where does that come from? Addictions, grief, guilt, and addicted to being shamed. And in our culture, and I'm talking about the Black culture, the melanated culture, addicted to shame. And you say, okay, Essence Evolved, expound on that for 30 seconds. When I say addicted to shame, we know what happened in our culture. We know what happened during slavery. But when do you get beyond the addiction of always reminding yourself about that part, a small smidget of your history or my history? But when do you move beyond the addiction? See, an addiction is something you do repetitively, right? When do you move beyond the addiction and move forward as a collective? Addicted to the same thing over and over and over and over and over, because that's what an addiction is. So when we go down to the trenches of finding you inside of you, you're going to see, I'm going to see, and I'm going to continue to see. Finding you inside of you is bringing you back into oneness with yourself, bringing you back into the authenticity of yourself. Because once we came from the womb, once we came from my mother's womb, and it did start in the womb, because babies hear while they're in the womb. They know that they were rejected or loved before they came out of the womb. That's a different story. But once we came from our mother's womb, it was like our journey started then of the recording right here in the mind and in the subconscious mind. And that's what we have to heal, which is within ourselves. The programming over and over and over. So this is Essence Evolve. I gave you a little bit about my story, and I will share more about my story as this evolves, because I didn't just get to where I am. It was a process, and it still is a process. And with us, it will always continue to be a process, because we're peeling off the layers. We're unpacking things on the inside of us that we did not know was there. And the more you unpack, the more layers you peel off, I can promise you, you'll walk in your destiny. And I will end with saying this. There is a difference between a person's fate and a person's journey. Fate, F-A-T-E, fate. That is what outside of you programmed you to think that you are. Get that part? The programming, fate. Your destiny is who you say that you are, and you begin to manifest that. Bump the fate. I get it. The fate said you would never be a school teacher. Heard this when I was growing up, but I knew that I was supposed to be a school teacher because I saw it. Destiny said, I am. So I did the necessary things to become that. Fate is an illusion that was created outside of you. That's the part that is stuck under the iceberg. That's the unhealed trauma. That's the unconscious trauma that you have to go within yourself and change fate to destiny. This is Essence Evolve, part 1 of this series of finding you inside of you, taking the deep dive to go within yourself and find out who you really are for your own self.